If I had known that one cup of tea could tip the balance of my whole life, I might have stayed in bed that morning. The kitchen was warm with Georgia sunlight, soft and golden, slipping past the lace curtains Stephanie had chosen for me. My daughter-in-law always said they were cheerful, but to me they looked like prison bars carved from cotton. Still, I sat there with my hands wrapped around a mug of strong black tea, savoring the steam and the illusion of peace. Before I go further, tell me, where are you listening from right now? I like to picture the porches, kitchens, and quiet living rooms where my story lands. And if you want to hear more stories of betrayal and survival, make sure you subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Grandma Maggie, my granddaughter Chloe said casually, her voice as light as if she were asking me to pass the sugar bowl. Can I use your account again? Just for tuition. It's only $12,000 this semester. Only $12,000. Her voice didn't tremble. Her hand didn't flinch. She leaned against the refrigerator door like a cat waiting to be fed. I blinked, slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the swirling steam in my cup. Chloe, I said softly, I just helped you with your books last month. $12,000 is not pocket change. She sighed, exaggerated and impatient, the kind of sigh young people learn from watching their parents. And sure enough, Stephanie looked up from her phone at the end of the table, her manicured fingers still resting on the screen. Her lips were tight, not quite a smile, not quite a scowl. Maggie, she said, her tone smooth as a courtroom speech, you know education isn't cheap. Chloe is trying to better herself. If you don't step up, she could lose her spot in the program. I turned my eyes from Chloe to Stephanie. I'd seen that look before. The look of someone who thought they had the upper hand because for years I let them believe it. No, I whispered. My voice was calm, but the word weighed like stone in the middle of that sunny kitchen. The silence that followed was sharp, slicing through the air like a blade. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Stephanie's hand darted forward, not to strike, not to snatch, but to tip my teacup. The hot liquid spilled straight into my lap, soaking the pale blue cotton of my dress, burning my skin beneath. I gasped, jolted upright, the mug tumbling from my hands to shatter against the tile floor. The sound was violent, too loud for such a quiet morning. My thighs stung. My pride shriveled. Stephanie didn't even blink. If you're going to be selfish, she said coldly, then maybe it's time you move out of this house. Either give Chloe what she needs or pack your things. We've carried you long enough. Carried me. That phrase sliced deeper than the hot tea. I steadied myself against the back of the chair, my hands shaking, the fabric of my dress clinging to me, still steaming. I looked from Stephanie's folded arms to Chloe's blank, expectant stare. Not one of them moved to help me. $12,000. For a girl who spent more time scrolling on her phone than studying. For a daughter-in-law who saw me not as a mother, not even as a grandmother, but as a reservoir waiting to be drained. I've been paying for the property taxes on this house, I whispered, my voice trembling but clear. I've covered the groceries more than once. I never once asked you to buy my prescriptions. And still you say you've been carrying me? Stephanie rolled her eyes. You're lucky Daniel even let you stay here after your surgery. You couldn't manage stairs, you couldn't cook for yourself. We did everything. You've been a burden, Maggie. And now you're balking at tuition. Her words clung to the air like smoke. I wanted to scream. Not from the sting of the tea, but from the betrayal. It wasn't kindness they'd offered me all those months after my husband passed and my knee gave out. It was control. They weren't helping me. They were cornering me. I stood, stiff, wet fabric clinging to me, and for the first time in years I didn't see family at that table. I saw predators dressed in Sunday smiles. Pack your things, Stephanie said, her voice flat as a judge's gavel. Out by the end of the day. Chloe looked bored, already scrolling through her phone again. No guilt, no love, just waiting for her money. My eyes fell to the floor. The shattered mug, white porcelain with faded violets. One jagged shard lay near my foot. A piece of something once delicate, now destroyed. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked slowly down the hallway, my knees aching, the sting of the tea fading into something colder. Something heavier. My dignity wasn't lost in the spill. It had been chipped away for months, and now it was gone. In the guest room they'd so proudly given me after my surgery, I closed the door quietly. My old suitcase sat dusty on the closet shelf, waiting like it knew this day would come. I pulled it down, steadying myself against the dresser, ignoring the sharp throb in my knee. Pain was familiar. Betrayal less so, but it burned deeper. I reached beneath the folded linens in the drawer, pulling out the thin envelope I had hidden months ago. Inside, my marriage license, my social security card, copies of old bank statements. I had tucked them away without knowing why, just a whisper of instinct. Now I understood. They didn't want me here as family. They wanted me here as leverage. I placed the envelope on top of the suitcase, sat on the bed and closed my eyes. For the first time I admitted the truth out loud, a whisper in the still air. This isn't my son's house anymore. It's Stephanie's stage. And I'm the prop she's grown tired of. I didn't sob. I didn't wail. I sat in silence, steady, waiting for the weight of the betrayal to settle in my bones. And when it did, I felt something else stir. Resolve. Because quiet doesn't mean weak. And I was done being carried. That afternoon, I sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase half-zipped, staring at the sunlight shifting across the hardwood floor. My knees throbbed, my lap still stung from the tea, but the worst ache was in my chest. I'd spent my whole life believing family was a safe place to land. Now I was realizing family can be the sharpest blade. I picked up my phone. My son Daniel's number stared back at me. I wanted to call him, to hear his voice, to believe he'd take my side against his wife. But deep down I already knew. Stephanie's words weren't just hers. They carried his silence. And silence speaks louder than denial. I pressed the button anyway. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then voicemail. You've reached Daniel. Leave a message. His voice was warm, recorded years ago, back when I still thought he'd always be my boy. I hung up without speaking. Because what could I say? That his wife burned me? That his daughter saw me as a wallet? He already knew. I opened the drawer of the nightstand and pulled out my old address book, the one I hadn't touched in years. Most names were scratched out. Friends who had moved away, neighbors who'd passed on. My eyes landed on one name written in fading blue ink. Pastor Harold Brooks. Retired minister. Widower. I hadn't spoken to him since Cliff's funeral, when he stood at my side like an anchor. I dialed his number. It rang twice before a voice answered, deep and steady. This is Harold. I swallowed. Harold, it's Maggie Delaney. Pause. Then warmth. Maggie, are you all right? The question cracked something inside me. Tears pricked my eyes, but I steadied my voice. No. But I will be. We arranged to meet the next morning at his little house near the river. He insisted on driving me, but I refused. I still have 2 good legs, I said, though one of them betrayed me with pain every step I took. That night I packed in silence. Every folded blouse felt like a surrender, every rolled pair of socks like a small death. I tucked my late husband's watch into a side pocket of the suitcase, the one thing I couldn't leave behind. Cliff had worn it every day for 40 years. Ticked steadily even now. A reminder that time kept moving even when hearts broke. From the hallway, I could hear Chloe's laughter echoing from her room, music thumping low through the walls. Stephanie's voice floated up the stairs, brisk and sharp, the kind of tone people use when they think they've won. But they didn't know what I was holding. Not anger. Not even grief. Something steadier. Resolve. The next morning I wheeled my suitcase out the front door. Stephanie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, lips pursed. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't say goodbye. She just muttered, "Don't expect to come crawling back when you realize you've got nothing." I looked her straight in the eye. I already had nothing here. The door shut behind me like a verdict. I walked slowly down the street until I saw Harold's old Buick waiting at the corner. He stepped out, tall despite his age, his gray hair neatly combed, his shoulders still broad from years of lifting hymnals and burdens alike. He opened the trunk, lifted my suitcase with ease, and said only 2 words. "You ready?" I nodded. We drove in silence for a while, the trees arching over the road like witnesses. Finally, Harold spoke. I've seen this before. Children who treat their parents like ATMs. Wives who lock their mothers-in-law in golden cages. You're not alone in this. I stared out the window, watching the river glint through the trees. I thought love would protect me, but love turned into leverage. Harold's hands tightened on the wheel. "That's not love, Maggie. That's possession." We reached his home, a modest white house with a wraparound porch. The kind of place where you felt safe leaving your shoes by the door. He led me inside, set a kettle on the stove, and spread a stack of papers across the table. Bank forms, informational pamphlets, even a brochure for a senior living community I'd once admired but never dared to dream of. I called a friend of mine, he said. She works with the county's elder protection unit. Financial abuse cases mostly. If you're willing, she can help. I stared at the papers, my breath catching. Elder protection. The words felt heavy, humiliating. I'd been a librarian for 40 years. I'd balanced checkbooks, paid bills on time, managed Cliff's retirement accounts. And now I needed protection from my own family. But then I thought of Chloe's bored face, Stephanie's smirk, Daniel's silence, and I nodded. I'm willing. We spent the afternoon gathering what little I had left. My notepad with scribbled dates and odd charges. Old envelopes with bank routing numbers. Receipts from pharmacies and grocery stores, some paid in cash because my card had mysteriously vanished months ago. Every piece felt like a puzzle, and Harold helped me fit them together. This isn't just neglect, he said quietly, tapping one receipt. It's theft. I sat back, my hands trembling, not from weakness but from fury I'd kept locked away. They didn't just take my money, Harold. They took my independence. My name. He met my eyes. Then let's take it back. That night he insisted I stay in his guest room. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, the sound of crickets humming outside the window. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of footsteps in the hall or voices plotting behind closed doors. For the first time in months I was safe. But safety wasn't enough. I wanted justice, and I was ready to start. Before I tell you what happened next, let me pause. Stories like mine aren't rare. They're happening quietly in houses across this country. Children and spouses turning love into leverage, draining the people who raised them. If you've ever seen it or lived it, stay with me. Because what came next was the twist they never saw coming. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you won't miss the rest of this journey. The next morning began with a knock on Harold's front door. I was still sipping tea at his kitchen table when he answered. A woman in her late 40s stepped inside, crisp navy blazer, leather briefcase in hand. She introduced herself as Detective Carla Jenkins from the county's Elder Protection Unit. Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharper than I expected. I hear you've got a story for me, Mrs. Delaney, she said, settling across the table. I swallowed. My hands trembled as I slid the notepad across to her. Page after page, scribbled dates and strange withdrawals, charges from stores I'd never set foot in, midnight ATM visits I never made. Carla flipped through slowly, her pen scratching notes in the margins. This isn't just sloppy accounting, she said at last. This looks intentional, coordinated. You say your daughter-in-law has access to your accounts. I nodded. She told me it was just temporary. Said she'd help with online bills while I recovered from surgery. I thought I could trust her. Carla's expression softened just enough. They always say it's temporary. He tapped one of the pages. This isn't just about money, Maggie. It's about power. But you still have more than you think. Her words landed heavy, but they lit something in me too. Power. That afternoon, Harold drove me back to my old neighborhood. Not to the house, I wasn't ready for that, but to the bank downtown. The same brick building Cliff and I had opened our first joint account in 40 years earlier. The banker, a young man with glasses too big for his face, clicked nervously on his keyboard as I handed over my identification and account numbers. His brow furrowed. Mrs. Delaney, there have been a lot of unusual transactions linked to your account. I know, I said, my voice steady. That's why I'm here. He hesitated, then leaned closer. And there are joint access privileges linked to your name. Someone added them 3 months ago. I froze. My signature was neat, careful, even in my 70s. The scrawl on the authorization form he printed out was not mine. Stephanie had forged it. The young man's voice dropped lower. We can flag the account. Freeze all activity until an investigation is complete. But it will mean that she can't touch another penny, I finished for him. He nodded. Harold's hand rested gently over mine. Do it, he said. The banker clicked a few more times, stamped a red frozen across the account file, and handed me the copy. It felt heavier than gold. Walking out of that bank, Savannah's humidity wrapped around me like a blanket, but I didn't mind. For the first time in months, I wasn't prey. I was the one setting traps. Back at Harold's, Carla spread out more forms across the table. One caught my eye, a financial protection order. It sounded clinical, but the weight of it was clear. It meant no one could access my money, my house, or my life insurance without my say-so. I hesitated. Signing it felt like admitting weakness, like stamping victim across my own forehead. But then I remembered Stephanie's smirk as she tipped the tea into my lap. Chloe's blank stare as she waited for 12,000 like it was nothing. Daniel's silence every time I called. I picked up the pen. My hand shook, but the line was steady. My name, my decision. Carla looked up and nodded. That's it. You've just built a wall they can't climb. That night, Harold grilled chicken out back while fireflies sparked across the yard. We sat on the porch with plates balanced on our laps. He didn't ask questions, didn't press for details. He just let the quiet stretch, safe and steady. After dinner, he leaned back in his chair and said softly, "You know, Maggie, justice doesn't always come with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it's as simple as a locked account and a locked door. Sometimes it's knowing they can't touch you anymore." I nodded, feeling the weight lift from my chest. "But Harold, they'll come after me. I know them. Stephanie won't stop with silence. She'll push harder. She'll come looking." He turned his gaze toward the darkening trees. "Then let her. This time she'll find someone she doesn't recognize." The next morning proved him right. My phone lit up with missed calls. Daniel. Then Stephanie. Then Chloe. Voicemails stacked one after another, their voices growing more desperate with each message. "Maggie, what did you do?" "Mom, you froze our accounts. We can't pay the mortgage." "Grandma, this is ridiculous. You're ruining my future." Each word was dipped in panic, not remorse. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money. And that was when it hit me. This wasn't the end of the betrayal. It was only the beginning. Before I go on, let me pause here. If you're still with me, thank you. These stories aren't easy to hear, but they're true. Have you ever trusted someone only to find out they cared more about your money than your love? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now so you'll hear how this battle unfolded. Because the storm was only starting. I woke to the sound of gravel crunching under tires outside Harold's house. The sun was barely over the trees, but I knew before I even peeked through the curtains who it was. A sleek silver SUV sat at the curb, Daniel in the driver's seat, Stephanie perched beside him like a queen ready for battle. Chloe was slumped in the back, arms crossed, eyes glued to her phone. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told them where I was. They had tracked me down anyway. The knock at the door rattled the frame. Harold was already up, his Bible open on the kitchen table. He glanced at me, calm as ever. "You want me to handle this?" I shook my head. "No. I need to see their faces." When I opened the door, Stephanie's eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. "What have you done, Maggie?" she snapped, skipping any pretense of civility. "The bank froze our account. Do you have any idea what kind of mess you've made?" "Our account?" I asked quietly. "Last I checked, it was mine." Daniel stepped forward, voice strained. "Mom, let's not do this here. Just come with us. We can fix it." I held the doorframe for balance. "No, Daniel. I trusted you. And while I was recovering, you let her steal my signature. You let her drain my life savings." Stephanie's laugh was harsh. "Life savings? Maggie, you're exaggerating. We used the money for bills. For Chloe's education. For the house you live in. You should be thanking us." Behind her, Chloe muttered without looking up from her phone, "Yeah, Grandma, don't be so dramatic. It's just money." Those words lit something in me. Just money. Money I had earned cataloging dusty books and checking out novels to children for 40 years. Money Cliff had left me after working double shifts at the docks. Money meant to keep me safe in my old age. I steadied my voice. It was never just money. It was my independence. Harold appeared at my side then, his presence solid as stone. "You need to leave," he said firmly to Stephanie and Daniel. "This isn't your home and you're not welcome here." Stephanie's eyes flashed. "Who are you to get involved?" He didn't flinch. "A friend who won't let you bully her anymore." Daniel tried again, softer this time. "Mom, please. Let's not make this ugly. We'll get the account straightened out. You just need to come home." Home. The word caught in my throat. I thought of the tea scalding my lap, of Stephanie's smirk, of Chloe's endless demands. That house hasn't been home in a long time. The silence stretched. Finally, Stephanie's face twisted. "Fine. Stay here and rot. But don't come crawling back when you realize he can't protect you forever. She turned on her heel, stalking back to the SUV. Daniel followed, shoulders hunched. Chloe trailed behind, still scrolling. The car pulled away, dust rising behind it. My knees nearly buckled, but Harold's arms steadied me. They won't stop, I whispered. No, he agreed. But neither will you. Later that day, Carla returned with a folder thick with documents. She laid them out like evidence in a trial. Copies of forged signatures, bank withdrawals, even insurance inquiries made in my name without my consent. They've been trying to access your husband's life insurance, she said grimly. If they succeed, you'll lose everything Cliff left you. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. Cliff's insurance was the one safety net I had left, the promise he'd made me before cancer took him. They can't have it, I whispered. Then we have to act fast, Carla said. Transfer the policy into a protected trust. Once it's locked, they'll never touch it. That evening, Harold drove me to the insurance office. The agent, a kind-eyed woman with a tidy bun, slid the paperwork across the desk. My hand shook as I signed, but when the final line was done, I felt lighter. Protected. At last. On the ride home, I stared out at the moss-draped oaks lining the street. For the first time in months, the branches didn't look like bars. They looked like arms reaching out, steady and strong. But peace didn't last long. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won? We'll see about that. Stephanie. I didn't need a signature to know. I set the phone down without replying. Silence was louder than any word I could have written. Before I go further, let me pause. If you're still listening, thank you. Betrayal like this cuts deep, and telling it takes strength I didn't know I had. If you've ever had to protect yourself from your own family, share your story in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because the next part of this story, that's where the real reckoning begins. The following week felt like walking across thin ice, each day a new crack echoing beneath my feet. Harold kept reminding me to stay calm, but the voicemails piling up on my phone told a different story. Daniel's voice grew tighter with each message. Stephanie's grew sharper. Chloe barely bothered, just one text that read, "You ruined my semester. Thanks a lot, Grandma." On Thursday morning, Carla knocked again. Her folder was thicker this time, her expression more severe. She laid down a document across Harold's kitchen table. "They filed a power of attorney form at the courthouse," she said, "claiming you gave Daniel and Stephanie control over your finances." My blood went cold. I leaned closer. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but the swoop of the G was wrong, the slant too steep. "That's not my hand," I said. "I never signed this." Carla nodded. "I believe you, and we can prove it. But they're escalating, which means you need to be ready." Harold placed a steady hand over mine. "You're not facing this alone." The next day I saw them again, this time at the insurance office. I had gone in with Harold to finalize the trust transfer for Cliff's life insurance. We'd barely stepped inside when Stephanie stormed in, Daniel trailing behind. Chloe wasn't with them. Maybe even she was tired of the fight. Stephanie's voice cut across the quiet lobby. "You have no right to be here, Maggie. That policy belongs to this family, not just you." The agent, a polite woman named Mrs. Alvarez, stepped in quickly. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but unless your name is on this policy, you'll need to leave." Stephanie shoved a folder forward. "It is. We have the paperwork." Mrs. Alvarez flipped through the pages. Her brows drew together. "These documents, they're copies. And this signature," she looked up at me, then back at the page. "It doesn't match." I felt my pulse in my ears, but my voice came steady. "Because it's a forgery." Daniel's face tightened. "Mom, please. We're just trying to help." "You're not thinking clearly." I turned to him, my own son, the boy I had raised on peanut butter sandwiches and library books. "No, Daniel. For the first time in years, I am thinking clearly. And what I see is a man who chose his wife's greed over his mother's trust." The room went still. Stephanie's lips curled, ready to unleash another tirade, but Mrs. Alvarez lifted her hand. "That's enough. If you continue this, I'll have to call security." For once, Stephanie hesitated. She gathered the forged papers back into her folder, muttering under her breath, and marched out. Daniel followed, his eyes flicking to me just once, shame flickering and fading like a weak flame in the wind. Harold exhaled slowly beside me. That was a turning point. he said softly. And he was right. For months they had pulled the strings. But now, in that lobby with strangers watching, their control slipped. That night, Harold poured 2 glasses of sweet tea on his porch, the cicadas buzzing like a choir in the trees. "They'll come at you again," he warned. I nodded. "Let them. The more they try, the more they show who they really are." The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office, with Carla's help. Forgery, financial exploitation, fraud. Words I never thought I'd say about my own family, now written in black ink on official forms. By afternoon, my phone lit up with blocked calls. I didn't answer. Silence was my shield. That evening, a plain white envelope slid under Harold's front door. No stamp, no address. Just my name in familiar cursive. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You think you've won, but you're destroying this family. Dad would be ashamed of you." No signature. But I knew whose hand had written it. I sat for a long time with that letter in my lap. Cliff's memory twisted into a weapon against me. They had taken my money, tried to take my house, and now they were reaching for my husband's grave. Harold found me there, tears blurring my vision. He took the letter, read it, and shook his head. "This isn't family, Maggie. This is warfare. And you're winning." Before I go further, let me pause. If you're still here, thank you. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they're important. Have you ever had someone use guilt to try and chain you back into silence? So tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened next was the final strike, the moment everything turned. The day of reckoning came on a Tuesday morning, clear and sharp as glass. I was sitting at Harold's kitchen table, buttering a slice of toast, when Carla arrived with 2 uniformed officers. Their presence filled the little house like thunderclouds rolling in. "It's time," Carla said, laying a folder in front of me. The district attorney signed off. "We've built enough of a case to move forward." My fingers hovered over the folder. Inside were the pieces of my life. Bank statements, forged forms, recorded voicemails, even the note they'd shoved under Harold's door. Evidence, plain and undeniable. I looked up at the officers. "What happens now?" One of them, a tall man with a calm drawl, said, "We'll bring them in for questioning. It doesn't mean jail right away, but it means accountability. It means they can't keep pretending." Accountability. That word tasted sweeter than honey. By noon, the news reached them. My phone buzzed with calls and messages, each one more frantic than the last. Stephanie's voice shrieked through the voicemail. "You've ruined us. Do you even realize what you've done?" Chloe's text came next. "You didn't just ruin me, Grandma. You ruined the whole family." Daniel's message was the hardest. His voice broke halfway through. "Mom, I didn't know it would go this far. Please, please don't let them do this." But I didn't answer. Not one call. Not one text. Because silence was no longer weakness. It was power. That evening, Harold drove me to Golden Oaks, a senior community I'd once admired from a distance. The sun was low, bathing the courtyard in a warm glow. Hydrangeas bloomed along the walk, and a koi pond shimmered at the edge of the garden. Inside, the director, a kind woman named Mrs. Lane, greeted me like I belonged there. She led me through the library, the craft rooms, even the little tea parlor with lemon cookies laid out on a tray. No locks on the doors, no whispers about being a burden. Just space. Freedom. "This could be your new start," Harold said as we paused by the koi pond. "A place where no one holds the keys but you." My throat tightened. "After all this, Harold, do I deserve a new start?" He smiled, soft and certain. "Of course you do. Because you chose yourself." That night I signed the lease. Not a contract in Stephanie's hand, not a trap disguised as kindness. My name, my choice. The next morning, I moved into a small apartment overlooking the garden. Carla stopped by with updates. "They're under investigation. Forgery, financial exploitation, attempted insurance fraud. It'll take time, but the law is on your side now." I thanked her, then sat by the window watching the koi ripple through the water. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Truly safe. A few days later, another envelope arrived, slipped under the door of Golden Oaks. I recognized the handwriting instantly, Daniel's this time. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short note. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I thought I was protecting my family, but all I did was destroy it. I'm sorry." I stared at the words. My son's apology. Too little too late. I folded the letter once, twice, then tucked it into my journal. Not to forgive him, but to remember. Because forgetting is how betrayal blooms again. Weeks passed. The investigation moved forward. Stephanie's name grew whispered in hushed tones around Savannah. Chloe dropped out of her program. Daniel kept his distance. Me. I flourished. I joined the book club in the Golden Oaks Library. I planted herbs on my balcony. I even laughed again, real laughter, the kind that echoes from the belly instead of the throat. One evening, Harold and I sat together on the garden bench, sipping lemonade as fireflies danced in the dusk. He looked at me with a quiet smile. "You've come full circle, Maggie." I nodded. I thought betrayal would break me, but it only showed me how strong I could be when I stopped explaining, stopped apologizing, and started protecting myself. I looked toward the glass doors of Golden Oaks, their heavy frames gleaming in the fading light. Outside was the world I had left behind, the voices that once chained me. Inside was peace, steady in mine. That night, as I lay in bed, the window open to the soft southern breeze, I whispered to the dark, "I am safe." The words weren't a plea anymore. They were a fact. And the wind that rushed through the curtains didn't sound like warning. It sounded like applause. Before I end, let me thank you for staying with me through this story. Betrayal may silence us, but telling the truth breaks those chains. If you've ever faced something like this, share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for more. Each week I tell another story of family, betrayal, and survival. Because silence protects them, but storytelling protects us.